welcome everyone to GBA Blockchain Week. I am Maria Vovchok, Community Relations Officer at CubicAssistant.io and Ambassador at Blockchain Association of Ukraine. Really excited to be here and discuss global digital transformation, sustainability, and social change today with our amazing panelists. So please welcome Bill Kentrup, co-founder at Allinfra. Bill has been involved in Asia's environmental infrastructure markets for nearly 2 decades. First as a founding director of Noble Environmental Solutions and Noble Carbon Credits, and later as head of Asia Environmental Financial Products at Macquarie Bank and head of Asia Renewables at Macquarie Capital Between. More recently, through the establishment of Radiant Partners in 2015 and Allinfra in 2017, Bill has partnered with leaders in the financial technology space with a particular focus on applying advanced fintech solutions to bring about efficiencies in the financing of infrastructure and environmental assets. In these roles, Bill has cultivated a broad and trusted network of sustainability leaders in Asia, capital markets, private sector, and government. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you. Great stuff.
Thank you. John Probandt, Chairman and CEO at BFD Inc. John Probandt has over 30 years of experience with investing in fitness, health, nutrition, diet, and bioscience industries. He was the youngest senior vice president in the history of San Francisco-based Dean Witter Reynolds, which later was acquired by Morgan Stanley. He's responsible for completion of investing over $300 million in privately held health-related enterprises. In addition, has been responsible for the deployment of well over $2.5 billion in publicly traded health sector opportunities. He has a deep passion for helping people enjoy a long and healthier life. Mr. Probandt has been an owner, investor, and innovator within the health, nutrition, diet, and fitness industry for over 3 decades. Hi, John.
Hello. And also, thank you.
Thank you, John. And also, please welcome, last but not least, Obinna Iwuno, Executive Secretary at SiBAN, Stakeholders in Blockchain Technology Association of Nigeria, the largest blockchain industry self-regulatory body in Africa. Obinna Iwuno is an entrepreneur, business developer, a financial management expert, a community and capacity builder who's passionate about people and social impact, technology, and the development of new innovations. He's a tech enthusiast, a blockchain educator, and crypto analyst who has trained and reached thousands of people across Africa and beyond on technology, business, blockchain, and cryptocurrency. Founder of the Crypto Bootcamp, a blockchain education platform. And also he's a director of Startup.Network, a group whose sole purpose is for blockchain development in Africa and beaming light on blockchain projects out of the continent. So welcome, Obinna.
Thank you very much.
Hi. So once again, today we're talking about social sustainability, social impact, social change, and digitization. So what can you say? Actually, if we analyze over the last couple of years, more and more companies are calling for this urgency on sustainability issues and climate action. But can we say that the impact, the disruption which was created by the COVID-19 pandemic situation is actually spurring us for greater action and is making us overview our lifestyles, our priorities, and how we see life in general? Who'd like to start? Bill?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think so. Before COVID hit, I focus on climate markets, climate-related finance, and I guess before COVID really sort of showed up, Paris agreements were bringing that awareness of the urgency around climate change, the need to improve financing for climate, for climate improvement projects was really kind of picking up steam before COVID. But I think over the course of COVID, a lot of governments, people, corporates kind of woke up to the fact that running operations that are exposed to volatility and risk, really not being prepared for the future, not running a sustainable business, it kind of underlined the need to address climate change. In my opinion, it seemed that a lot of the corporate and government interest in climate even stepped up during COVID. So even though, let's say the economy was challenged by COVID, the commitments were sort of redoubled over the course of COVID. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that looking forward, people recognize that, let's say having operations where you're exposed to the cost of fossil fuel power, that's a challenge. If you've got more renewable energy with domestic renewable sources, that helps create more stability in businesses. I think energy efficiency, so just conserving energy and resources, is really just a great measure to both address climate change, but also run a business or run an economy that is less exposed to volatility. So I think certainly over COVID, the need to address climate change there was quite a bright light shined on that, and the activity around it was accelerated. And really excited to talk about some of the areas where digital's come into play there. The historic climate markets, especially over the Kyoto Protocol markets back in the early 2000s, were very analog, very clumsy, very fraught with risks and errors. And so that was actually attributed by many to the reason Kyoto actually never continued after 2012, and why it's taken until this long, 2020, basically, to get Paris agreements off the ground. So we can go in, I'll hand over maybe to John to comment from his perspective, but I'll talk a little bit later about some of the ways digital plays a role here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. John, what would you like to comment on this?
Your question is, what has COVID done in my particular area to create more interest? Is that the question?
And not only interest, but maybe urgency for greater actions.
Well, it's pretty simple. One of the main causes of death, high-risk people among COVID, was type 2 diabetes. And our whole emphasis is changing people's diets. For example, willpower, right? Willpower means absolutely nothing if you're trying to improve yourself. What means something is changing your habits, developing new routines, developing new ways of eating more foods that are better for your body, that your body can digest easier, and avoid altogether getting type 2 diabetes. In the 80s, mainland China, they only had 1% type 2 diabetes. And in 2021, they got 13%. Why is that? Because in 1980, in China, they didn't know it, but they were practicing portion control and intermittent fasting. The reason was they didn't have much money, food supplies were short, so they were consuming about 80 calories at breakfast. They were consuming about 80 calories at lunch. And at dinner, they'd have maybe 2,000 calories. This is because of money, because of lack of food. But as the economy got more affluent, they started eating 1,000 calories at lunch, 2,000 calories. 1,000 calories at breakfast, 2,000 calories at lunch, and 3,000 calories at dinner. And that created this type 2 diabetes problem. Then COVID came along, and the people that were dying were people that had type 2 diabetes and people over 85 years old. So yeah, my area for sure has been impacted in a very powerful way from COVID. We don't like to see people die. Nobody wants to see that. And it's in your control to avoid things like type 2 diabetes, to have a better mental self-image of yourself. All those things are in my area. And all those things have to do with blockchain and peer-to-peer making products, because more and more people are buying healthy products at this point.
Can you please, in this case, develop on more how it is connected, as you mentioned, with the blockchain, your specific area?
Because we make products, right? So,
yes.
So peer-to-peer, when you manufacture the products, for example, if we manufacture products, if we sell products in China, mainland Chinese like to buy products made outside of China when it comes with food. Oh. So we want to know exactly where that product is at any period of time, from the point that it's manufactured. Well, actually from the point that we're getting the raw ingredients to the manufacturing, to the shipping, and to the ultimate consumer use, right?
So you're using it in supply management for this.
And in some other ways also. So ultimately, they'll have at least maybe 100 million people a day consuming our products or competitors' products, because of the way people are changing the way they're eating and the way that they're changing their lifestyle. Blockchain, digital currencies, all kinds of things are associated with this and will be. We don't even know yet because it's changing so rapidly, people's consumer patterns.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Maybe what we like to, what you would like to add, Obinna, in this case?
Okay. The impact, the special impact that the COVID-19 has had in my specific area is, I would say, in terms of connectivity, right? So we look at it like this. I'm in the education sector, but with the coming of the COVID-19, now people cannot meet physically, so there is social distancing, and of course, at the point it was a total lockdown, so you cannot even go out, right? Except for essentials. There are procedures for you to get these essentials, right? And then, of course, when the lockdown was relaxed, then there were laws on social distancing and the number of people who can meet. So we in the education sector, we are thinking, okay, if we are on a global lockdown, then do we shut people's mind? No. So what do? What we have found out is this, that during the COVID-19 pandemic, the whole lockdown period, we were able to reach more people than we had in the past years, because now we are able to connect to hundreds and thousands of people at once, because we have never really explored the power of online education and connectivity. Yeah, we use that, but it has never really been like a focus. Now we were left with an option that, hey, this is the only option that you have, and we discovered that, hey, people could be connected rapidly across several regions just in one time. For example, you are somewhere else in, I think, Hong Kong, Olga is in Moscow, I'm in Nigeria, and we are communicating in real time, right? So what I saw is that there was an increase in knowledge, right? Because we could make more impact. And then also looking at the other perspective, you found out that a lot of the world's population think that for us to be productive, we have to go to an office space, right? So without an office space, we cannot work, we cannot produce, and all of that. But we saw that during the COVID-19, people were even more productive by working from home than they had been from working from the office. So I think that after the relaxation of the whole lockdown and all of this, we really need to look at working conditions, right, of our office settings, because these things are things that has to do with our psychological health, our mental health, and our mind. So what is it that is missing in the office setting that could be included to make people as productive as they were like when they were working from their comfort zone? And also, the COVID-19 actually exposed the world to how the health risk that we are in. There's a whole lot of health risk that we are exposed to, but we are not really looking at this thing. So with the coming of the COVID-19, it actually exposed a lot of these health risks that exist in our world. So the COVID-19 has also given us that consciousness that we really have to have a proper health management system, and we have to increase healthcare, globally. I think these are some of the takes for me from the whole COVID-19 situation.
Thank you, Obinna. Well, actually, today you actually already mentioned that important aspects of our life, which is which we need to work on. And this is nutrition, education, and climate action. But when we are talking, for example, additionally digitization, of course, in terms of education, it's easier for us to understand how it can help and boost and help to our education all over the planet. But how can digitization in this case help sustainability in terms of nutrition and in terms of climate actions? Bill, John.
Sure, I'll have a crack at the climate side. So, you know, in order to help address climate change, you know, we're talking about trillions of dollars of capital commitment, whether it's related to energy efficiency, direct greenhouse gas emissions, preservation of forests, renewable energy. And historically, the way in which third parties and governments tried to audit that. So is that capital going into projects or into companies where that's being achieved? How do you keep track of it? Well, it was very manual. It meant that every so often, and during the course of the Kyoto markets, we would verify anywhere from 10 to maybe 30 projects per year, or through our carbon financing platform. What that was like was it would take 3 to 6 months to have a third party come collect data, write reports, submit reports to something like the United Nations or to another third party to get those verified. And then 3 to 6 months later, we would have our carbon financing in place. It was very manual. It was very expensive, 20 to 80,000 US dollars per project per year to get that done. With digital, in a similar way to what John was describing for tracking, you know, nutritional, I guess, or source of origin of food and so forth. We and other parties using digital are taking that manual process I just described, putting it on digital rails, meaning we are connecting directly into those assets, pulling data from those assets, all the data that relates to evidencing whether emission reductions are happening, whether in essence climate's being addressed through the financing and the actual action on the ground. We're pulling that data, we're moving it directly onto blockchain so that apologies for the fire drill in the backyard, in the back there. But we're putting that data right on chain. We are then using it for carbon accounting, for climate finance. Asset managers are using it for reporting between LPs and GPs, as well as to produce environmental certificates like carbon credits. We're doing that at a fraction of the cost, maybe 10 to 20% of the historic kind of process. It's in a much more reliable format. So it's direct data from an asset in an immutable environment. But what's really exciting is that because that's being collected in real time, there's no lag. There's no waiting for someone to come to the site to collect data, to write reports. It's direct data. It's instantly accessible. It can instantly be converted to product. But what that does is it allows the market to feel confident that the capital is going into the right assets. The assets are actually contributing to reduced emissions, and therefore, whether it's the provisions of a debt agreement or commitments made between shareholders, GPs, LPs, all of that can be in a sense evidenced at a much lower cost, much more reliable fashion. And ultimately what that does is it just allows more capital to move in the climate finance space. So again, massive, we already have global average temperatures rising. The challenge to reverse that or to stop it is just enormous. Even if we stopped greenhouse gas emissions today, there's still a lot of work to do. So it's just such an urgent issue, and use of digital in that environment is creating much greater certainty, more optionality, reducing risk. It's a game changer in the space that I love and have been in for a couple of decades.
Thank you. John or Obinna, what would you like to add here? I can
basically add, I'm on the same line as Bill is. When it comes down to accountability, it comes to safety, knowing in food, quality controls everything. So your ingredients that you make a product with, you need to know where they came from. If there's some kind of problem that you hear of later, where there's some kind of, like, say, insecticide or that was toxic, that was used in a particular area, we could quickly identify if we used any of those ingredients within our food products that we make and pull those off the market if we had to. It just gives you more accountability, it gives you more safety, it gives you better distribution. Everything about it is right. It used to be done just like Bill said. Everything's done manually by one person here, one person there. And to go back and trace something was almost impossible. Okay, to trace where you had a problem. How big a problem do you have? Because we're just as concerned about getting people healthy as not making them sick. Okay, so you see food products pulled off the market all the time because they aren't safe and they don't even know where the ingredient was. Where did they buy it? They bought this in Indiana and they bought that in Brazil. It's the same product, but which one created the contaminated food? Okay, we have to know that.
Yeah,
and
but
so.
But
yes.
John, here I would like to ask you, what if somebody inserts the information into blockchain, which is not correct one about this product? I mean,
there's always challenges, and you have to develop in your system. The oldest adage in the computer business was garbage in, garbage out. And that's what you're talking about. So if you put garbage in any algorithm, you're going to get garbage out. And how do you overcome that? That's just, this is a new industry. And over a period of time, different types of auditing and internal strengths will be able to identify those problems and then later correct those problems. So garbage in, garbage out is always going to be a problem whether you're dealing with anything that deals with anything that has to do with computers. That's for sure. That's still a problem. That's a problem for sure. For sure. It'll be solved over a period of time because software is remarkable.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it will be the truth in the future.
No. Already AI can pick up when people enter things wrong. So AI is going to get more sophisticated. AI is going to get to the point, artificial intelligence is going to get to the point where if things are entered in the wrong way, it's going to pick it up and it's going to bounce it right away. We're not quite to that point, but we're pretty close.
I will just mention very quickly, just on that note, we are using, in relation to the sort of data that we're collecting, it's not just precisely the climate related data, but we're also picking up metadata from devices so that we know whether devices have been tampered with or changed. So to the point, to that last question, at least in relation to renewable energy production, power consumption, things like that, we are able to detect remotely whether there is some tampering. Now, there are certain aspects and certain things that periodically we would do spot checks and so forth. But there are some technological and I guess good old fashioned ways to work out whether the system's being corrupted.
Thank you, Obinna. Would you like to add here?
So, come to the area of food and nutrition. What we are looking at, first of all, is even achieving food security in this part of the world, right? Because you don't have food security yet. But we are, despite that, we are already educating, and bringing to the awareness that, hey, we could have a better food management system. So, like John said, we put this on a blockchain, so we know where if this particular product is coming from, right? So if this is the product that is infected or contaminated, we know that this is you'll be able to trace it back, and then you could correct the problem. But if you do not have this system where it can be tracked or you keep data, then how are you going to know? So that is an issue. That is an issue on itself. So it's not just about the food production, but how secure is the food production? How is the food production management system working? So this is one thing that we already educating about and pushing for strongly, bringing strong awareness to this, that, hey, we have to get this done. We have to put this in place because what we are talking about is human lives at risk, and we should reduce the risk that humans are exposed to the barest minimum, all right? And then when you talk about climate, there's a lot of consumption of wealth. For example, I know that France has a policy to phase out gasoline cars by 2030, I think. There is no such policy in my country, right? So while other countries are moving ahead to reduce gas emission, greenhouse and all of that, I do not see what is being put in place to do that. So we are even at that level where we are bringing to the awareness that, hey, there is, I know that climate change is part of the current SDGs, but what we are at now is getting the institutions that are directly involved to implement, to act on these things, because if you are not planning for these things, what is going to happen to you is that the world is going to leave you behind. Like in Norway, you have more electric cars in Norway than in any other part of the world. And, that is a step in the right direction. They are going green. They are tackling these problems, fighting it and finding solutions to it. So that is where we are at here. So I'm not going to begin to talk about how that XYZ company is doing this amazing. There is no such investment yet. So what we are doing is bringing the awareness that, hey, this is where we ought to be moving at this particular point in time. All right. So we want to see companies who would invest in clean energy, right? So that we could reduce the greenhouse, because it's putting everybody at risk, and it's a collective responsibility that everybody has to work with. So over here, I'd say that we have a much more higher task in that area than I think some other parts of the world. So this is our own peculiar situation. So I'm speaking from our own personal experience.
I see. Do you see that really the companies whose main priorities is actually to invest in clean energy and do something in this direction will be the most successful? And do you also see the habits of people that they are changing, that they are ready, for example, to change their investing behavior and invest, for example, in specific such type of companies?
Okay. Even for those companies to operate effectively, right? There has to be certain infrastructures that are publicly and generally put in place that people use. All right. Give you an example. I visit a friend in New York, right? And he has gas flow into his home, right? So I'm in Nigeria. I don't have gas flow into my home. So if I want gas, I go buy gas with a cylinder. So if you are setting up company in this industry, the first question is, are there infrastructures in place that support the growth of this industry? So we would begin first by addressing the infrastructural deficit. We'll begin by addressing the infrastructural problem. So I think the first companies that would even benefit from this and would be invested into are the ones who come in to address the infrastructure that would enable this industry to thrive.
Thank you, John.
So that is,
sorry.
Yeah. Fine. That's my special take on that.
Thank you, John.
Your question is?
My question is again the same. So where do you see only the companies which will whose main focus will be only clean energy will be the most successful and people will be willing to invest in them in the future?
Well, of course, there's social responsibility funds that exist, and you're seeing more and more money put in socially responsible type money management funds. That has something to do with it. But when you're a fiduciary and you're investing money, you have to invest it responsibly. Responsibly does not just mean to invest it in the best way possible for society. It also means you can't lose the money for the investors, which
Mhm.
creates a little bit of a problem. There's always a time gap on when the investments are right to make. So, so you really have to have, it has to be a good investment, right? But absolutely, as time goes on, you're seeing more and more money go into these areas, and you see these areas mature. And all of a sudden, when something gets hot, it just takes off like a rocket for sure. And then money chases it hard. But the
Mhm.
early investments are usually from socially responsible type government funds, socially responsible endowments from big universities. Those types of investors have been there for a long period of time. I used to handle some money for some social responsible labor unions at one point, and they would take more risk with that money because they wanted to make a difference in the world. And that was back in 1995. So this is not new that people are thinking of doing this. And the labor unions in the United States were kind of a little bit ahead of the game, and people don't give them credit for that and investing in this particular area, Taft-Hartley type plans.
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, sure. So I think that, where we are now is that investment in clean energy is becoming, and I guess in many places has become financially attractive relative to other energy sources. So apart from maybe having an environmental benefit, it is, on a risk-adjusted basis, it's a great return. And just by example, the firm that I was at, Macquarie, they're the largest global infrastructure asset manager. When I first joined in 2007, renewables was, I would say a niche component of that. And now renewables is probably the largest asset class within the largest infrastructure asset manager. And that's not just based on an impact objective, but actually a high quality risk adjusted return. So I think whether it's, clean energy, energy efficiency, we're well into an era where in many markets it's a very competitive investment financially alone. The ability to then overlay on that, evidencing, and how different, whether you're a lender or an investor, how you're contributing to decarbonization, that's becoming more and more important. Even over COVID, we saw many countries announce decarbonization targets.
Yeah.
We have Paris agreements where there's over 295, well, there's 295 participants, but over 290 of those countries have set climate finance, climate or carbon reducing targets. And one of the things that digital is really bringing to the table, and I'll maybe mention this in reference to some nations in Africa, that a lot of what really helps climate finance move is technology transfer and basically sort of either government to government or corporate banks financing in various regions and creating liquidity, creating flow there. That's really important. And one of the challenges has always been to track who gets credit for that. So for example, if you've got a pool of international investors that invest in clean energy in a country in Africa, who gets the credit for the emission reductions? Who gets the right to claim that against those 290 country commitments? So with digital, what's happening is that climate accounting is going digital, climate finance is going digital, carbon credits are going digital, so that it allows for a much more fluid allocation of rights to make that claim. So if you're then a European or let's say a Japanese financier financing projects in Africa or in a couple countries in Africa, blockchain can allocate who gets the rights to the emission reductions. You can put a geofence around that so that the emission reductions are pre-allocated country by country. So it really allows, and those claims go right to your balance sheet in a digital accounting environment. So it really creates this sort of fluidity in a way that I think is going to allow sort of cross-financing, tech transfer to happen in a much higher confidence, in a much more productive way.
Thank you, Bill. Very quickly, because we are running out of time. Do you think the motto or the agenda of sustainable digital transformation will be continuing over the next years?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going, Paris agreements is set out over a very long time frame. Kyoto was a short time frame. Paris agreements are long term. But I see this, the commitments from corporates and governments going only in one direction for the foreseeable future.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's going to continue. It's going to escalate.
And
that's the shortest answer I can give you.
Obinna?
Yeah, it's definitely absolutely going to continue because it is a necessity. It is a necessity that has to be achieved. So it's definitely going to continue, and more effort has to be put into it to actually achieve this because it makes everything better.
Yeah, definitely. We'll see the urgency. Hopefully still everything we'll see the future more sustainable. Thank you so much. Bill Kentrup, co-founder at Allinfra, John Probandt, chairman and CEO at BFD Inc., and Obinna Iwuno, executive secretary at SiBAN, Stakeholders in Blockchain Technology Association of Nigeria, especially for GBA Blockchain Week. I'm Maria Vovchok. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
Thank you.
And thank you. Thanks, everybody. Cool team.
Thanks, Francis.